Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville, Knox County government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that happens to grab our attention. I'm Scott Barker, the editor of Compass, and we're a subscription-based website and newsletter, and we report on all those topics. And you can find us at CompassKnox.com. We're reporting this in the opulent studios of Barbarian Productions in Rocky Hill, lovely Rocky Hill, and this is where Lord Seth Barber, our producer, reigns supreme. How are you doing today, Seth?
Doing well. I've been running around dodging traffic. It is apparently winter out here has become utility season. They get out there and they're digging holes. The KUB likes to dig in the frozen ground out here. Maybe it's a moisture thing or something like that. But they tend to do a lot of utility work out here.
Yeah, the on my way over here from world headquarters of Compass in North Knoxville, I ran into one road that was closed completely and another that was had delays. You know, the guy standing there with these slow and stop signs. So, people think that you folks in West Knoxville have it made, but it seems like there's utility work everywhere you turn out here.
Okay, people keep moving in. They keep building new neighborhoods out here. It's already traffic busy. I'm turning into one of those NIMBYs that wants to start going to meetings and say no.
Well, there are plenty of them. You'll have lots of companies. So
I just it's a good way to make new friends, I suppose.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we've got quite a few things to talk about today. This is Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday. And all week the past week, there have been events leading up to the holiday. One of those we covered. It was a symposium, leadership symposium that where a lot of leaders in the African American community talked about the challenges that they still face, and we'll also talk briefly about the special session in the legislature on school vouchers. That is coming up on the 27th. We got in the weeds earlier this week or last week on the city council in Knoxville has set up a procedures and charter review task force. And yes, I could sense your eyes glazing over. We'll talk a little bit about that. It could have some significant ramifications down the road. But we're going to lead off with kind of the big news statewide of the week, and it's that Senator Marsha Blackburn is going to run for governor. She hasn't announced it yet, but sources told us this week that sources who have direct knowledge of her plans, that she is going to run. Just about it would take a catastrophe probably for her not to run. She's been the last week or so. She's been calling donors. She's been calling legislators and other public officials around the state. My understanding is she's been passing out campaign contributions to a lot of those folks too, drumming up support for a bid, and that's kind of it's big news locally too, because that means that Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs, who has been kind of laying the groundwork for a run for governor himself, is kind of now not going to be running. He actually endorsed Blackburn should she decide to run this week when they were both in Nashville at a legislative reception, and he made that statement. He put that out there that that he would endorse Blackburn. Blackburn automatically becomes the favorite to be to be the Republican nominee, which whoever that is going to be the favorite to win the governorship, since Tennessee has become a GOP stronghold. The last Republican governor was Phil Bredesen, or I'm sorry, Democratic governor was Phil Bredesen. Republicans have won with at least 60 and at one time 70% of the vote in every gubernatorial election, which is 4 since then. Bill Lee, the current governor, can't run because of term limits. So, but Blackburn, she just finished her first term as senator. She actually in her first run obliterated Phil Bredesen, which was kind of a little bit unusual. The margin was a little bit unusual because the thinking at the time was Bredesen as a popular Democratic and middle of the road Democrat, pro-business Democrat, would have done that. He would have done better, but Blackburn dispatched him with ease. And she just ran for re-election last year and easily defeated Knoxville State Representative Gloria Johnson. Blackburn already has this huge statewide network in place. They just finished a statewide election a couple of months ago, so she is going to not stand down that network and she's going ahead and moving forward with a gubernatorial run. It's kind of it took a lot of people by surprise. She really wasn't on the radar as running for governor until she started calling people and asking for their support. And there's a lot of speculation about why she's doing it. I mean, she hasn't addressed it yet, or at least as of this is Friday when we're recording this. As of today, she has not addressed it at all.
For those Colloquy members out there, there's a great thread on the Colloquy for everybody right now. What is the Colloquy again, Scott, real quick?
The Colloquy is a members-only Facebook discussion group. So if you subscribe to Compass, you can join the Colloquy and discuss all these state and local issues that we talk about.
Because that's been a fun thread. I have an unfounded, completely facts-free theory that I threw out on there, which makes total sense to me. Which we're not going to talk about on here, but I do. I mean, I think that is the most. It does see it's. Like you said, it was a very shocking turn of events. Like, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people over the history of like politics and stuff. You have a view I can think of. I mean, DeSantis went from House of Reps, federal rep, to the governor of Florida, but it's a weird move in the political hierarchy of things to step quote unquote down to governor. And so I agree. I'm very interested to hear her reasoning when she announces it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation about that. One is, she's 72, I believe, 72, 74. She's in her 70s. And there's speculation that part of it was she just wanted to be closer to her grandkids.
Right.
And full time. I mean, obviously, senators come home every weekend and take lots of vacations, but she is a grandmother. She often talks about how wonderful her grandkids are. She loves spending time with them. She, according to her, they have a big family dinner every Sunday. She might want to have dinner on Wednesday with them instead, and or in addition. and that's one reason. Another, which is another compelling one, is she would be the first female governor of the state of Tennessee should she win.
Right, she already has the distinction of being the first senator from the state of Tennessee.
First female senator, yes. Yeah, and so she would have the opportunity to make history again. But as I said, right now all this is kind of speculation, which is probably the favorite parlor game of people who are into politics. So,
that's me. That's totally me.
But as far as facts go, we don't have any on her motivation there. There were a couple of other Republicans who were talking about running. One, hold on just a second.
You're good. One that you already mentioned. We have our current Knox County mayor who was very much in discussion of it. You already mentioned that one.
Yeah, and while we're talking about speculation, one of the rumors running around Nashville that I kept hearing was that I wasn't there. I was rumors by phone from Nashville, but one of the things was that Jacobs would be a possible choice to replace Blackburn in the Senate. That would take a couple of things to fall in line for that to happen. One would be Blackburn. Well, first of all, the governor appoints the successor, and while there's no indication that there's any bad blood or anything like that between the governor and the county mayor, he is definitely closer to Blackburn than he is to Lee. They are very close friends. They're ideologically simpatico. There's Blackburn is the fourth most conservative senator currently by one group that looks at such things. Jacobs, as most of our listeners know, is basically a libertarian who is very, very conservative as well. Both are major supporters of President-elect Donald Trump. And if you're listening to this on Monday after the inauguration, he is President Donald Trump again. The only way that I think most people think he's going to be appointed to succeed Blackburn is if she waits until Inauguration Day, assuming she wins. These are all assuming that she wins not only the Republican primary but also the general election. Then if she waits till right about Inauguration Day to resign her seat, because there's not a vacancy to fill until she resigns, but if she resigns her seat right before the inauguration, Lee won't really have a chance to make an appointment, and then Blackburn would then make an appointment and could. It's not a done deal. No one has said that it would be a done deal, but she could tap Jacobs to replace her.
And that would time out correctly because we would have already elected a new county mayor by that point.
Yeah,
as well. So it's not like he's going to end up vacating here, and we have a replacement process here locally either.
Well, he wouldn't have been. It would have been the same as running for governor as well. If Jacobs had gotten the Republican nomination and won the election, the same thing would have applied. Jacobs, of course, is term limited here, But one thing there is if Blackburn does that, she might make Lee really, really mad by taking away kind of his parting wave to Tennessee about his naming a senator to replace her. But at that point, Lee will have served 2 terms, would be out of office, and she might not care.
He's got to go start his own podcast like all the other former governors have.
Yeah.
So he can complain about it on his podcast if it upsets him.
Yeah. So anyway, Blackburn is now obviously the odds-on favorite to win the Republican nomination. There are a couple of people who have made noise about running. The CoreCivic, the CEO, Damon, I believe it's Nininger or Nininger. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. I've only read it. I haven't heard it pronounced. He CoreCivic, of course, he's talked about running. CoreCivic is the prison private company that runs prisons. He's had there have been some big issues they have. They run the state prison in Trousdale County in Hartsville, and they're under investigation for some abuses up there. And he's got a lot of baggage, but he also has a lot of money and could mount a campaign. Joe Baker, the owner of Old Smoky Moonshine and Yeehaw Brewing Company, has talked about running. The only one, though, who has real who could pose a real challenge to Blackburn would be John Rose. He's the state or the U.S. representative in Middle Tennessee from Cookeville. He's got tons of cash. He has been talking about running for governor. He is in the right area as far as his district goes, because most the power in the Republican Party in Tennessee is firmly in the suburban Nashville area, which is also where Blackburn's from. So Rose could mount a challenge, but one of the issues he would face is that I don't know about you, but a lot of our listeners probably have never heard his name before now. He's not. He is a congressman, but he's a congressman in Middle Tennessee. Is new, fairly new. He's not. He doesn't appear on CNN a bunch like Tim Burchett does, and things like that.
So you're telling me he's not a UFO guy?
Well, I don't know that. That's the thing. There is a lot about him that people don't know, because he has been kind of flying under the radar as far as your average voter goes.
Right.
So
I mean, there's a lot. There are a lot of people in the House of Representatives that we don't really hear about much, just because there's so many of them. It's the loud or crazy ones that get the most
well,
attention.
in your own. I mean,
right.
everybody pays attention to their own congressperson. So
exactly.
But anyway, Blackburn will probably, I've been told, make an announcement before the end of January. When I was talking to people, it was around, like I said, it was last week. They were saying within 2 weeks she'll make a formal announcement, so that should come by the end of January. Of course, we'll cover that, and whatever she comes up with, we'll cover, and we'll cover the race a little bit. We don't really cover Senate races a whole lot, but because they are statewide races, and our focus is on Knoxville and Knox County. But there is one of the reasons we want to cover that is because she is the odds-on favorite. She is very close to Glenn Jacobs. There's, as we said, the possibility that she could appoint him to replace her if those stars align. And she also could make him a commissioner in state government should she win. So it would still have an impact on kind of what we on Jacobs and by extension locally here too. The next thing I want to talk about is the last week's city council. Amid all of the hoopla and melee of the contentious council meeting that they had was centered on KPD issues. They voted to form a task force to study city council procedures and a charter review process. And I won't go into too much detail here because, yes, like I said earlier, eyes are glazing over.
There's nothing more exciting than a task force, in especially in local government.
And looking at procedures, but it's one of those things that it's been this is something that's been weighing heavily on council members' minds. They talked about it in very from time to time, especially they had a retreat, they have an annual retreat every winter. Last year it was at the Zoo Knoxville in the winter. They talked about it then. But when you talk about procedures, there's a section of the city code that lays out exactly how city council is supposed to conduct their business. And it's got 25 different rules. And they're going to be looking at all of them. And it's just this section of the city code they're going to be looking at. And it covers quite a bit of stuff. I mean, it's one of the things that the people in the general public would be most interested in is it covers public input and public comment at council meetings. That's been a big bone of contention on some issues. The city council rules currently state that a maximum number of 3 people can speak on each side of an issue when when they're considering an ordinance or a resolution. They can speak for up to 5 minutes each, but unless they decide to waive their rules, that's it. And there are a lot of issues that come up where more than 3 people want to speak on a side. Sometimes it's as many as 15 or 20 people who want to speak. There were I don't know how many at the city council meeting that was almost 2 weeks ago now. How many people signed up to speak? Because you do, again, one of the rules is you got to sign up to speak. You can't just show up and speak. But it was far more than 3 on each side. There was a lot of, and the people who were there in opposition to this contract that was going to help KPD with their software on the real-time information center, real-time crime center, and a bunch of other stuff. Long-term $27 million contract. A lot of opposition to it from activists in the community, and they were absolutely angry that they had to limit the number of people who spoke. In fact, we had 2 people, and one at the beginning of the discussion, one at the end, who tried to speak and who had not signed up or they weren't one of the 3, and both of them got removed from the meeting. And, it was, but they're going to be looking at that. One of the things there are several council members who like to suspend the rules so that more people can comment at these meetings, so that's something that's that people would be able to feel and see. I mean, if they completely do away with the limits on the number of people who can speak, those meetings can last a long time. So, and it's one of those things too that when you're around government bodies and you cover them and watch them closely. One of the insights that you get is that only on very rare occasions does someone who actually speaks at a meeting, a citizen who speaks at a meeting, sways a commissioner or council member. It is very rare. Most of the time, if the persuasion is done in ahead of time. That's the thing, either by calling, by emailing, by speaking to them in person. That's generally more effective. They've already talked to you. They've already looked at the agenda. They've looked at the background. They've talked to the administration. They've done their homework, and so generally speaking, by the time of the meeting, they might be conflicted, and they might say they're conflicted, but generally speaking, they know how they're going to vote. I don't mean to sound like I am saying that public comment is useless, because I have seen it be effective.
Well, there's a level of it too that you're doing it for the camera and the crowd as much as it is you're trying to convince one city councilor. You're also, I'm making this point for next time you get elected. We can talk about it, and that's an election point in the future. So there is other parts of it in the public forum that make sense. But I agree, and in everything that I've paid attention to as well, I don't know that I've seen one personally, not that I've seen a ton, where a light bulb clicks and, okay, that argument made my decision for me.
Yeah, it has happened. I've seen it happen, but it is rare. But yeah, there are reasons. I mean, the city council members themselves, in their discussions, because the way that this is set up, again, one of the rules that they're going to be looking at is that the people, the general public who are for or against an item will talk about it. Then it's council's turn to debate the issue and then vote on it. And quite often, council members will, for example, ask a question of a member of the administration, not because they don't know, because they do. They know what the answer is. They want someone in the administration or someone involved to
put it on the record
that this is what's going on.
Right.
So that's a very common thing. And people who speak at these public meetings are also often are saying that just to put it on the record, or you said, give notice to members that, hey, we're going to remember this, when it's when you're up for re-election or whatever. So, but anyway, that's just one aspect of it. They're looking at everything. They're looking at some council members have and this is a behind the scenes thing, have complained that the agenda and background materials, which are distributed on Thursday evenings to them, the Thursday evening before the Tuesday meeting, that doesn't give them enough time to really understand and get into everything, because they basically have only 2 working days to find out more information. And a lot of times these agenda, the background materials run well over 1,000 pages. I mean, it's a lot of information to digest, and so they might be looking at, set the agenda further ahead of time. That might be something that's up for discussion. Everything's going to be up for discussion on this. There are interesting things. One thing that some people who've spoken at council have complained about, that's in the council rules, is that council follows their meetings. They follow Robert's Rules of Order, of course. Almost every public body does. That's not the Congress or something, but most meetings are do that. They follow Robert's Rules of Order, but the code also says we will follow that, except when the code actually says specifically deviates from Robert's Rules of Order, and they can, and they do. One of the things that people sometimes get upset about is the mayor will weigh in on issues they're debating. In Robert's Rules of Order, the person who presides over the meeting is not allowed to participate in the discussion, but the council rules specifically state the mayor can, and so the mayor does. A lot of sometimes there will be cat calls from the audience at meetings that you're not supposed to, Robert's rules, you need to follow Robert's rules. Well, they only follow Robert's rules unless it conflicts with the city code, and the city code takes precedence over that. So anyway, that's half of what they're looking at. The other half is setting up a charter review process, and this is actually probably a bigger deal in some ways, because the charter is the foundational document for the city. You could say it's like a constitution. It's not exactly a constitution, but it's very similar. Sets up the form of government, kind of lays the groundwork for the code, all of that. It can only be amended by a vote of the registered voters in the city. But any amendments to the charter that have come up just kind of bubble up. There's no they haven't, to my knowledge, ever gone back and done a complete review of the charter to see if there's something that they might want to change, or say you might want to see if voters would want to change it. Generally speaking, I mean, yes, last year there were 2 charter amendments on the general election ballot in November. Those were kind of forced on the city by state government change in state law. That was a response to that. Otherwise, the changes to the way that the city elects district reps would have even come up, or probably wouldn't have even come up had it not been for this change in state law. Before that, the last time the charter was amended was 2016, and there were 4 amendments then. 3 of them involved pensions. The 4th involved moving the primary in city elections up a month, so it gives the election commission more time to do the things they need to do to get ready for the general election. So it's rare, but what this will do is they're going to set up a way to, every so often, it might be 6 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they're going to have a process to look at the charter, propose changes that could be made for city council to vote to put it on the ballot. The county, Knox County already has this, because Knox County is a home rule county with a charter. Every 8 years, county commission there's a committee formed. It's not just commissioners. It's but a charter review committee is formed. They discuss it. They propose possible amendments that commission votes whether to put on the ballot or not. For instance, the last time this happened, I believe it was 2022. They put on the ballot a question about whether you wanted the law director to be an appointed position rather than an elected position. That was rejected. Said Knox County is still the only county in the state with an elected law director, to our knowledge. But anyway, that is something that that they're going to be doing. This is going to be over the next 9 months. They're going to be looking at these things and make recommendations. There's a reason that this is. They've got a 9-month window. Vice Mayor Tommy Smith, who kind of put this together, wanted it that way so that the people who are on city council now will be able to vote on this because they have a greater understanding of the issues, the reasons behind these discussions. Vote on that because 5 members are going to be rotating off after the November election this year. So he wants to get it done before then. And the task force is made up of current council members who aren't term limited, or they are term limited, but they're not going to rotate off this year. And 2 former council members and vice mayors, and Bill Lyons, who was a longtime aide to multiple mayors, and is with the Institute of American Civics at the Baker School at UT, political science professor, lots of keen understanding of how government works. They're all going to be on this task force.
Okay, so real quick question, because it just hit me while you were talking about it. But as a charter amendment on the ballot, it has to be on a gubernatorial ballot, so it'd have to wait 2 years?
It has to be on a general election ballot, a state general election ballot. So, yes, it would be any...
So it can't run with this city council race that's coming up this year?
No.
26.
No, and on the charter side of this, they are only going to be putting a process in place. They're not going to be proposing any amendments. That will be, if let's say, just for convenience sake, they're going to do the same thing Knox County does, have a charter review committee that meets every 8 years. That charter review committee that meets every 8 years isn't formed yet. What they would do is what this task force would do is they would come up with and I don't know, they may have to amend the charter to do this. They may be able to do this just by changing the code to create the process legally, and they'll have to do that. And then,
they would produce suggestions for amendments that would then go to the current city council to get.
Well, no. What will happen is the task force will create a process or propose a process. City council would vote on it, and then they'd approve the process. The process, let's say, comes up with a charter review committee. That committee then would meet at some point in the future, depending on what
the topics and such are.
What council decides. I mean, they may wait till 2030 to meet, and then at 2030 they meet and they look at the charter and see if there are any changes that they would propose to council. So it's a very long and involved process. So,
gotcha. Okay,
but all these things are important, but it is getting in the weeds. You don't want to get in the weeds.
Right, we tried not to.
We try not to, but we do anyway all the time. That task force, their first meeting is actually going to be on Tuesday. So they're meeting at 3:30 in the small assembly room of the city county building. It's going to be mostly organizational. They're not going to make any decisions. Mostly organizational. Most of the meetings will be very wonkish, very in the weeds, and only those who are most fascinated by government processes will be paying attention until it's done. Then a lot of people probably will pay attention. That's the way these things work.
Right.
So, anyway, moving on from that, Governor Bill Lee has called his special session on his voucher proposal. And just listeners should know by now, we may have new listeners, people may forget, the voucher proposal would be to provide scholarships of around $7,000 each to students for them to go to private schools in K through 12. These are It's been very controversial because the sense is that it's basically taking kids out of public schools and putting them in private schools, subsidizing their private school education. Last year, Lee had a similar proposal. Republicans in the House had a different view. Republicans in the Senate had a different view. Nobody could reconcile any of the three views, and it died. This year, he's got support from the Republican leadership in both houses to approve this, but he still has a problem with rural legislators, so it's unclear if he's been able to persuade them or enough of them to support the program. But there is going to be a special session. There are going to be a couple of other topics in the special session as well. One of them would be disaster relief for Northeast Tennessee from Hurricane Helene. There's a lot of people on the who are anti-voucher who are worried that they're going to be linked together. That essentially it would be, we'll give more relief for Northeast Tennessee if you approve the voucher thing. Lee and his people have said no, that's not the case. But
so since we got in the weeds, I have a weeds question on this, just for the procedural sake. We're talking about the city procedure and the weeds of that. So we're in session.
Yes.
Why do we have a special session in session?
It's a special session within a session.
But functionally, what's the
functionally what's going to happen is nothing else will be done except the topics of the special session during that time frame.
Does this remove subcommittee from the Senate conversation too, or do the different education subcommittees, are they still going to get their subcommittee time, or is it all full session?
Well, the education committees and subcommittees could, I would imagine, meet, and it would make sense for them to meet during the special session, but the Ways and Means Committee won't be meeting. But the state and local government committee and the Senate won't be meeting.
Right, but I guess the question on
everything else will stop except for.
But if education does meet, do they get to propose changes to the bill, or is that part of the special? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that can happen. Of course, it can happen.
Okay.
The legislature can make changes.
And then does a special session also give the ability for the law to go into effect sooner than the standard July, whatever? It's still...
No. All it does is it focuses their attention. And this is the voucher. The voucher program is the centerpiece of Lee's agenda,
right,
for this legislative session. So he wants to focus attention on it and make sure that they buckle down and do something. I think is part of it too. So basically, all other work in the legislature will come to a halt for as long as that special session lasts. It's one of the most divisive education issues that's come down the pike in the last few years, and there have been a lot of divisive education issues. So, but it's and there are a lot of there are a lot of questions about it still. One of the things that came up is during the week last week is Chalkbeat Tennessee, which is a news website that covers education, and they reported a study by Ed Trust of Tennessee that the voucher program could end up directing $862 million taxpayer money to private schools over the first 5 years. One of the things is about this bill, the way it's written currently, is that there will be 20,000 of these $7,000 scholarships the first year, and they would add 5,000 a year after that. So the cost is pretty steep there. that is not coming out of the school formula. So that has been raised. So it's not taking money, technically not taking money away from the public schools.
I mean, it is, but isn't.
Well, what it's doing is it's going to take money out of the pool that is fed by
gamblers,
sports gambling.
Yeah, get out there and bet people, pay for kids to go to private school.
And all, yeah, and which is also where scholarship money has been coming from. Tennessee Achieves gets money from it. So that accounting is going to be interesting. Plus, and in addition to this money going to the scholarships themselves, they're also going to make sure that the school systems themselves are made whole. They're not because the formula for public school funding, which is way more complicated than it ought to be, but it is. But at its core is based on enrollment, and so if you have kids who aren't enrolled in your school system anymore, and they're going to private schools, then yes, it does could have an effect on your funding. Depends on the number, obviously, of students that do this, and so the state has said that they will be made whole. So that's essentially saying we're paying for students twice to get them into these private schools. So, but there are a lot of dynamics at play.
They're paying off teachers to get their support.
They are paying off teachers.
I mean, that's the only way to say that phrase.
$2,000 one-time bonus for teachers.
Just to say yes to the passing of this bill.
And which I haven't, most of the teachers that have made public comments about that, I know, are not swayed by that bonus. There is a little bit more accountability. These students will have to be tested. There's always that accountability aspect of it. Not all students in these private schools, but these particular students, yes. The actual impact on public schools is might be less than people would think, primarily because $7,000 is not a whole lot when it comes to private school education. It's a lot of private schools charge twice that and more. And so you've got to have, if you get one of these scholarships, the selling point is that kids can leave failing quote unquote public schools and use those to go to private schools. But low income students almost certainly would not be able to do that because low income families don't have the extra $7,000 to make up that. Right.
They can't pay half a tuition, let alone a whole tuition.
Yeah, they can't pay the half that they would pay under the plan. So most of the people who would be using these scholarships would either, and this is played out in other states that have been using vouchers. Arkansas, notably, is either people who are already going to private schools will get scholarship to help them out, or it's people who are just this close to being able to afford a private school, and this will get them over the top where they are able to. So it's not going to be for truly low income families in Tennessee.
Absolutely, because I would assume that over a short period of time, as this would kick in, that the cost of the current private schools that exist would go up because their demand would go up, as well as their number of students and the infrastructure that individual school needs. So it may come out in the wash after 5 years anyway.
Yeah. Well, and one thing too is, and this is a lot of students. I mean, when you're talking 20,000 students who would be getting these scholarships. That is the equivalent. If those 20,000 students were in one, and I believe I made this point last week, in one school system, they were their own school system, they would be the 10th largest in the state. I mean, that's more students than go to Sevier County schools. So it's not,
right,
it's not
a small number.
It's not an insignificant number of students. And, but this session will actually end up hinging on what it will hinge on is the rural legislators, because rural legislators are there aren't as many private schools in rural areas. They don't want to do anything to harm their public school systems, and if they feel that continue to feel that this would harm their public school systems, they might maintain their opposition to it and carry that over from last year. So just because the Senate and House leadership have kind of fallen in line behind Lee doesn't necessarily mean that it's a done deal that this is going to pass. Now, are the odds better? Yeah, the odds are better. But
have we heard any from our local delegation where they're standing on this plan?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Richard Briggs, state senator, has been on the record many times opposing vouchers. So now I haven't talked to obviously the Democrats are Gloria Johnson and Sam McKenzie are against those. They're the state representatives. Democrats in the Knox County delegation, they're against it. Some of the Republicans who are very conservative, I want to say Jason Zachary, for example, probably. I don't recall off the top of my head what his position would be on it, but the more it's a real hot button issue for conservatives who tout this as school choice, and that kind of falls in line with Zachary and some other legislators there. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but but they're really the urban legislators, and they would be considered urban legislators, even though Zachary represents Choteau and Farragut. It's not exactly. But it's in an urban area. They don't matter. What matters, they don't matter as much as the rural legislators, the ones who represent Grundy County and DeKalb County, and Fentress County and Ray County. All of those legislators are the one. That's where the battleground is.
Gotcha.
And anyway, obviously we will be following the developments on the special session. As they go, that session, by the way, begins, if I didn't mention it before, begins on the 27th of this month, which is a week from this Monday. And this Monday is, of course, Martin Luther King Day, Junior Day. We had our correspondent, Angela Dennis, who attended Leadership Symposium that was held on Thursday. It was interesting in that this was a group of mostly African American leaders who were talking about the challenges facing the Black community in Knoxville, in the spirit of honoring the legacy of Dr. King. It was well attended. It was at the University of Tennessee. There were some leaders, Sam McKenzie, I mentioned before. He was there. Pastor Chris Battle was there. Ursula Bailey, who's a civil rights attorney, attended. They talked about the political climate, especially with the Trump administration coming in, and how that might impact the African American community and other communities that are sometimes marginalized. They talked about crime a little bit. Talked about how to unify. We had Chris Battle was talking about how the church communities in East Knoxville, where he's which is a minority area in our community, and churches have traditionally played a huge role in not just the community but in political life, and all much more to a much greater extent than most churches in the rest of Knoxville have. There are only a couple that are anywhere close to as politically active as most of the African American churches, but he complained that they're in silos. They don't talk to each other as much as they should. That sort of thing. They talked about the problem of young African American professionals leaving Knoxville. That's been a big complaint. I think it was a complaint that black colleagues of mine had at the News Sentinel when I worked there back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's just young black professionals don't see Knoxville as having a lot to offer them, and and that drain of brain power and those and quite frankly examples of what you can achieve for as an African American in a society that is still not there are still places where there are impediments to your advancement, and as an example to others, they're gone. They leave. They go to Atlanta, they go to Nashville, they go to Charlotte, and so that's a big problem. So they, of course, this is a symposium. It doesn't solve any problems, but it was kind of an interesting event in that people spoke more frankly, I think, than they normally do in public events like this. It was Angela's reporting was extensive. She quoted extensively from them. She really didn't interject a whole lot into it. Just this is what Pastor Battle said. This is what Representative McKenzie said. This, and so on down the line. And that's one of those things, and it's one of those stories that we talked about this at the beginning. Kind of whatever catches our fancy. This is, yes, it's timely in that it's on about the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. It was held during King Week, which is the annual celebration by the Commemorative Association here of his legacy. But it's one of those things where you can really gain insight into some members of the community who sometimes are find it more difficult to navigate our city and our county than white people do, and it's very, very instructive and sometimes surprising. I think a lot of the professional brain drain, I think, is something that a lot of people don't realize is a truly vital issue in the black community. So that was anyway. That was how we kind of ended the week in our reporting. Those are things that you can, you'll get if you go to our website. These are longer stories for the most part. You can get on our website, if you subscribe. But we also have a daily newsletter, which, quite frankly, most of our readers really is their favorite part of Compass. You get every Monday or every weekday morning, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Your inbox gets a newsletter that isn't just a link to other stuff. It's got actual news in it for you to read, and won't go into too much detail now, but there were several items of note that were in the newsletter this week. One was had to do with a couple of officer-involved shootings that happened that have happened recently. We don't normally cover law and order things. There are a couple things we do. One is officer-involved shootings, and another is police policy and those kinds of things. But in this, you have to give credit to WBIR for first reporting this. They got copies of the search warrant that the sheriff's office used in a raid that in South Knox County that in which deputies shot and killed 18-year-old Devin St. Germain as an African-American youth. They had said that they had a search warrant. They found Hector Sanchez, the judge who signed off on the search warrant, unsealed it. WBIR was the first to have it. It laid out the reasons behind it. It was basically based almost entirely on online surveillance of purported gang activity. The Saint Germain, and they released photos as well, screenshots of some of his postings. There were photos of him with weapons, with what appeared to be marijuana, large sums of cash that he posted on his social media account, his Instagram account. The search, we don't know what happened inside the home, other than the sheriff's department or sheriff's office said that he, quote unquote, displayed a firearm. There's, whatever that means.
Right, the word display is a very interesting word in that sentence to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, in a way, it's cop speak.
Right.
But in a way, but it also isn't as, they don't say he aimed a weapon at officers. They don't say that, they said he displayed it. I mean, that's
right.
Putting, mounting it on a plaque and putting it up on your wall is displaying it. So anyway, but they did, like I said, it was a search warrant. The reason they were there is a search warrant, and they did seize weapons, a rifle, a couple of handguns, magazines. They seized marijuana and ecstasy, some other unidentified white powder, and things like that. So, they were able to find, and those are all things that, in general, that were used as justification for the search warrant. And that was, they had a whole inventory of everything that they removed from the premises. A lot of this could end up being a very politically fraught incident, because the city council movement, which is, yes, primarily concerned with city issues, and this is the county law enforcement agency that did this, but they're also residents of the county, and there's a social justice. It's a political, almost a political party devoted to social justice. They've condemned this as being more of an example of biased policing. So it could end up getting very interesting politically for Sheriff Spangler. Another officer-involved shooting that we looked at was 2 KPD officers were cleared of any wrongdoing in a shooting that happened in November in North Knoxville near my house, where a guy was kind of going a little nuts with an axe. He was bashing cars with an axe, and when officers showed up there, he charged at them and still had the axe. He wouldn't put it down, wouldn't obey them, because he had an axe, which is, hey, it's a weapon. And they were coming toward he was coming toward the officers, and they shot him. He survived. He was wounded. He had warrants against him and all, but now he's got lots of charges against him. But the officers were cleared of any wrongdoing in that one. We had a bit about a mobility study for Choteau, which is if you have followed development news, the residents in Choteau are fed up with their basically country roads out there where large subdivisions have been proliferating over the past 20 years. Traffic is congestion is a huge issue there. So the county is conducting a mobility study to see what can be done about that. They had a meeting last Thursday. This is the next few months. They're going to be looking at that. Also, and this just happened at the end of the week, there's an interesting bill. We talked about Senator Briggs, and he proposed a bill that was quite unusual in that it would, if a development proposal comes through, it complies with zoning already, and a development plan gets presented to a county commission or city council, they are required to approve it, and they cannot have any public discussion of it, which kind of runs counter to what most people think of as when they talk about public meetings. Briggs said that, of course, it was done because developers think that it's an extra step that they don't need to take, and if it complies with zoning, and most in Knox County, all that goes through the planning commission first before these things go to county commission and city council. So there's the idea that it might be an extra step. However, county commission and city council only, for the most part, consider the zoning stuff. This bill doesn't change the zoning stuff, the zoning amendments and rezonings and those kinds of things. So they would still go to the governing boards, and they would approve or reject them. They could have public input. But the development plans, the actual plans the developer has, would not. And now, granted, in Knox County, and it really might not have that much of an effect on Knox County because those don't generally go to county commission, city council. Once the planning commission approves a plan for a development, it is final, and you can appeal to court. But I mean, it's for the political purposes, that is it. There's one difference. There is one exception, and that's what's called plan development. It's a process of how you they consider developments. Plan development allows more flexibility than the zoning would otherwise allow. But in exchange, the developer has to provide amenities that can be enjoyed by the general public, not just the residents, and then meet other guidelines and standards as well. Now, those have to go to the preliminary plans, go to county commission or city council in those cases. But and there has to be a public hearing, which that part of it could run counter to this bill's intent. I'm not sure. It's very, very gray at the moment. But the final decision on the plan does reside with the planning commission. It's only the preliminary plan that the elected bodies look at. So there's
on the face of it, it seems kind of to run counter to the public input model that local governing bodies and committees follow, and follow almost religiously. Kim Frazier, who's the vice chair of the Knox County Commission, and the co-founder of the Knox County Planning Alliance, which is an advocacy group for responsible development. She came out, as opposed to anything that removes public input, and she would rather that elected bodies make those decisions anyway, even though they don't in Knox County. So that's a bill that has been filed. No action's been taken on. The session just started, and again on the 27th it'll be interrupted. But it's interesting because it does. Assuming for many counties, and perhaps in Knox County, in regard to planned development projects, would take away people's ability to weigh in on these issues, and that's them's fighting words for a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to see, how that goes moving forward. And anyway, like I said, those are examples of how of some of the things that we cover in the newsletter. It's in many of these things. It's the only place you're going to find it. So that is in addition to that and the Compass Colloquy and our longer stories that are on our website. Those are all good reasons to check us out at CompassKnox.com. Now, turn our attention to the coming week, and lots of things going on. Of course, it's a short week because of the holiday and because of the changes to or renovations to the main assembly room, the city county building. The schedules are all out of whack. County Commission and City Council are both meeting. Mentioned earlier, this task forces on rules changes in the charter and charter review will be meeting. They're meeting at 3:30 in the small assembly room, the city county building, on Monday. After that, at 5 o'clock, the beer board meets, the city beer board, and then at 6 o'clock, City Council will convene for a voting meeting. They've got several contracts on they're up. One of them that will probably get some attention is a contract with the McNabb Center to participate in the city's co-response program, which pairs a social worker from McNabb Center with a police officer to respond to calls possibly related to someone in mental distress or mental crisis. That's been a big bone of contention in the city. There are a lot of advocates who would like to see no police involvement in these kinds of calls at all. To pair a paramedic with a social worker for those types of calls. The city and the county are actually looking into that. But in the meantime, this contract is over $800,000, would enable KPD to actually expand that. Then on Wednesday, the county commission will have its turn to take over the small assembly room for most of the day. One of the at 3 o'clock, they will have it's an agenda review, where it's a non-voting session where they would review items that are going to be on the agenda for the voting meeting, which will be the following Monday, the 27th. Kind of the top item there will be establishing a policy for what's called a residential infrastructure development district. That's where people who live within this district would pay a special assessment to pay for infrastructure improvements related to that development. That's allowed by state law now. Actually, it is state law now. You can do that, and that's something that they're going to vote on the 27th. But at 4:00 on Wednesday, they're going to actually have a public hearing and vote on the first of those districts. Even though they don't have a policy on it, they're going to go ahead and have a public hearing and a vote on that. That's a development on Tipton Station Road. Would require a couple of big interchange improvements, and so that's going to that public hearing will be then, and then after that, zoning matters that come before City Council or County Commission, not development plans. Remember, we just talked about that. It's all about zoning on Wednesday afternoon. Anyway, that's kind of a quick look ahead. We will be covering those things and other issues and events that might pop up between now and next week when we'll be back. So would like to thank Lord Seth Barber, our producer, again. Thank you, Seth. And Will Wright, whose music goes along with our podcast. And we'll be back next week with yet another installment of Compass Points.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee. Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.